this is going to be an interesting video. We're going to be talking about different things today, and yeah, let's get right into it. New World War II weapons for the upcoming game. These are my predictions. If Battlefield does go into a World War II setting, we're going to see these weapons at some point in the game. And we're going to center these up into 4 different classes. These 4 classes will of course be Assault, which will be your medic class, your Engineer, which will be your rockets, you know, destroying and repairing vehicles. You got your Support, where you give out ammo and all that. And that's exactly what we are going to be doing in this game. We're going to be explaining what I believe is going to be these guns in the game. Of course, Scout will be the 4th one, if you guys haven't figured that one out. And let's get right into it. We're going to start off with the Assault class, which will be your typical assault rifles. And of course, those guns will be... For some reason, it's not letting me spawn in. Well, we're going to talk about the FG42, the BAR, of course the BAR, the M1A1 carbine, which will be your typical M1A1 carbine. These are basic weapons that you're going to be seeing in an average World War II shooter. These are the ones that are typical in these type of games. Of course, the SVT-40, the M1 Garand, the Gewehr 43, and the Sturmgewehr 43. All different weapons. I think they'll have their own places, and if they want to do different like variants, kind of like how they do in Battlefield 1, of course that will be open to them. Gadgets for the Assault class will be Medkit, the Medic Box, as shown in World War I and Battlefield 4. In all these other games, you have the Medkit, which will be your throwable object. Of course, the Med Box that you can place down. And we got the World War II style revive system, maybe something a little bit new, something to showcase that. And a grenade launcher, frag and detonation, which will be your high explosive rounds, which will be similar to this kind of system where there could be a smoke grenade. That's also an idea. We're going to move on to the Engineer class, where we are using the Thompson. Of course, the Thompson's going to be in the game. That's almost guaranteed at this point. Guns like the SVT-40, the MP-40, the Sten, the PPSH-41, and the Type 100. Of course, there's more than likely going to be a grease gun of some sort in the game, which will be your light SMG, your American light SMG, to be a little bit more specific. Of course, shotguns would include like the iconic Winchester rifle, the 1897 variant. You can see that in the new Call of Duty game. The Ithaca Model 37, because there's got to be a couple different shotguns in the game. I don't think that there's only going to be a couple, even though it is a Battlefield style game. There has to be at least a couple different ones. Of course, the Remington Model 11 is another one that I'm thinking that they're going to add in. And of course, gadgets for this one will be a couple different ones. Something like the Panzerfaust, which is like a shoot and forget type of rocket launcher. And then you got the bazooka, obviously iconic. And then you got the Panzerschreck, which is a little bit more viable than the Panzerfaust. Of course, there's the PIAT launcher, the Type 4 AT launcher, which is the Japanese variant. We got the anti-tank sticky grenade. Something to add in, maybe that'll be like a grenade add-on where it's an actual grenade. Or of course the satchel charge, which I think will be engineers property in the next game. Support guns would be the obvious ones, the MG42. We got the Vickers machine gun, the Bren light automatic rifle, the Browning 1917. Of course, we got the DP28 and the Lewis gun, coming back into this game as LMGs. Alright, now we're moving on to the scout rifles. We got the Lee Enfield Mach 3, the M1903 Springfield, the Mosin Nagant, because they can't have a World War II-esque shooter without Soviet weapons, as they do make a big part of the combat in World War II. Of course, we got the RE Saka, which is the Japanese bolt-action rifle. Of course, I wanted to add this one in. This is kind of like what I think is going to happen, but probably won't. And I'm thinking it's the Type 24 Chinese bolt-action rifle. It's just a Chinese bolt-action rifle, so I'm not thinking it's going to be in the base game, if it's going to be in the game at all. If it's going to be in the game at all, it's probably going to be in DLC format. Other guns like the Kar 98K also could be named the Gewehr 98. Bunch of different names you can have for this gun. Obviously, it is one of the most iconic weapons of World War II, so not having it in the game would make absolutely no sense. Of course, gadgets like the spotting flare, spawn beacon, binoculars, flash flare, AT infantry mine, which will be your typical infantry mine, kind of like the tripwire bomb, but it's more of a World War II-esque look, kind of like this, but it's a mine, not a bomb. Of course, I wanted to add on pistols into the game because, well, pistols are pistols, and personally, we need to implement a new system where you can use any pistol for any class. Obviously, I think that should be an addition to every game. I thought it was an interesting addition having pistols that can be used for a couple classes, and then having pistols that are automatically unable to be used for any classes. By any classes, I mean any other classes than their original class, which is a little weird. These pistols, of course, would include the 1911, which is typical for any game, actually, to have a 1911 variant, because it is that iconic of a weapon. Of course, I wanted to add in the Tokarev TT-33, Russian 9mm, Webley, because there's going to be at least a couple different revolver variant weapons, or we might as well have a couple of them. The C96, I think that's going to be making a return in this game. The Colt 1917 revolver, because I think that there should be at least a couple revolvers in the game. The Browning 1900, kind of like the couple of these weapons are from this game as well. It also gives them a chance to not necessarily copy off of this game a little bit, but use the same kind of general style weapons. Save production at least a little bit. Of course, the next one would be the Walther P38, the Smith & Wesson Model 10, and the Luger P08, because you can't have a World War II-esque shooter without the Luger. Almost like the 1911. Alright, and then we have DLC weapons that I didn't want to put into the main game, but I still think that they're going to be coming out at some point. Of course, one of them being the PPS-43, which is an updated version of the PPSH, the 41 version, obviously. But it'll be as DLC because they can't just have a World War II shooter without a PPSH-41. It's just not going to happen. Of course, that would be for the engineer class. Then we've got the Volkssturmgewehr, which will be for the assault class. Obviously, there might be a lot more weapons than this, so bear with me in that regard. We got the Beretta 1934, which is a pistol. The PPD-40, which is an earlier style of the PPSH. I just think that there's going to be a bunch of different versions of the gun because you can make the gun different in that regard. There's been so many different variants of the gun that has seen combat in World War II, I just thought it would be a better idea to have a couple variants of the gun that do certain things and make the game a little bit different when it comes to that aspect. Of course, we got the Owen gun. If you look at games like Call of Duty World War II, it comes out as the Orso SMG. Of course, we got the 1941. Can't have a World War II game without the Johnson rifles. Of course, we've got a pistol like the Nambu, which probably might be in the main game, but they could reserve this for a DLC style release. Of course, the Madsen MG, which is an iconic LMG in general. I think that gun will eventually come out for the game, but I don't think it'll be released when the main game comes out.
Half of the enemy forces are gone.
Of course, the last one for the DLC weapons, I wanted to look at the MG15, because I think the MG15 should have its place in the game. And then, of course, weapons that may not be forgotten, but highly unlikely to show up in the game. Guns like the MP18. That would be for the engineer class. And of course, I wanted to talk about the M4 survival rifle, which could be a out-of-the-park gun, but it was deployed in World War II for pilots in their survival hunting gear. That's why it's called the M4 survival rifle. It's a four round bolt action rifle.
We have lost objective apples.
Chambered in 22. I had to remember that. And it was for them if they had dropped off or whatever. For whatever reason, they got killed, or not killed, they got dropped out of the air, and they needed to survive by hunting wild game. That was what they would use. Of course, the next one would be the SG-43, which is, I believe, a Russian LMG. But I don't see it being in the game at all, although it could definitely be an addition later in the line as DLC. Of course, that is almost highly unlikely because of the way the gun is viewed at. The Lanchester, the SMG, also known as the WAF, could possibly be in the game, but I just don't see, with all the iconic SMGs, where it falls in. Just like the MP18, I just don't see it happening. Of course, we got the Enfield #2, which is also a revolver. Again, this could be mixed and matched with the Webley, all the Smith & Wessons of the world. You know, guns like that can like be swapped in for different guns. I think that could possibly be in. The well rod is also another pistol that could be added in
We have lost objective Alpha.
in some sort of fashion. Maybe not as the main gun in the game, but of course, maybe as DLC. Of course, I would say that it's probably not. The M40 Rising, or M50 Rising, mind you. The gun is
Half of the enemy
probably
forces
not
are
going to
gone.
be in the game, but there's always a possibility. Never say never, as they say. The Irma EMP could also be in the game. Not really hot on this weapon. I don't see the devs thinking of this as an iconic SMG to add in a World War II style shooter. But never say never, as they say. Of course, there's another one called the No, we're gonna skip on that. We got the ZK-412, which is a Zek prototype AR for the assault class. Then we got the RPD, which is a support weapon for the Russians. That was produced in 1945. Did not see combat, but it could make the cut because of it being produced in 45. Of course, then we got the SKS, which would be coming out for the assault class, which did see action in World War II. Of course, it would be a older version of the gun, something you probably wouldn't see in a Battlefield 4 version. It would be a much, much different SKS. Then we got the M2 carbine, which would be a full auto variant of the M1A1 carbine. I just don't see it being in the game because of the fact that it would be an auto variant of the gun. Why use a semi-auto when you got the auto variant? Then we got the K31, which is a Swiss bolt-action rifle. Probably not, because it resembles the Gewehr in a lot of ways, like a lot of the bolt-action rifles do. Then we got the MAS-38, which will be the last weapon that I will be showcasing in this game. It is a French submachine gun. Nothing to add there. It was a predecessor for the FAMAS and other guns like that. Tell me what you guys think. Comment section down below. And I think I'll see you guys in the next one.